Good morning, world. Welcome to another episode of Xendependently Minded. If you are a new or returning listener, I truly hope you enjoy this episode. Before we get into the episode, here's a brief disclaimer. Enjoy. The views and opinions expressed by past, present, and future guests of Xendependently Minded have not been expressed by me, and they may not even be shared by me. The views and opinions that I express are, of course, satirical. If you're confused, then try this thought experiment to help you understand. If you like what I said, or say, and you agree, then you can tell yourself that it is my real opinion, and it's not satirical. If you don't agree with what I say, and you're disgusted and repulsed by it, then obviously I'm just being satirical. Obviously, these aren't my real opinions, because this is clearly a character, and nobody would actually have these opinions, would they? Anyway, enjoy the episode. How's it going, boys and girls? It's your boy, sad man uneducated American here to report the unfortunate news that the Department of Education has been killed. The Department of Education was assassinated on March 20th, 2025. Orange Hitler, Putin's puppet, the guy who has been arming Ukraine to the teeth since his first administration, but he is Putin's puppet nonetheless. He signed an executive order aimed at dismantling and dissolving the Department of Education. This is really sad because a lot of experts have rightfully pointed out that American kids, which all of a sudden people are pretending to care about, despite decades and decades of neglect and proof of the opposite. Critics are pointing out that American kids, without the tens of billions of dollars allocated to the bloated budget of the Department of Education, corrupt administrators won't be able to pass on high-quality education like they have since 1979, when the Department of Education was created. Experts have made the following terrifying predictions: that now, without the Department of Education, the United States and its children, its public school students, might rank 6th out of 37 OECD countries in literacy. Just think about that for a second. The United States, a country that its primary language is English, they might fall to 6th out of 37 participating. Basically, the OECD countries are countries that participate in studies every couple years to gauge the educational quality of 15-year-old kids, pretty much. Just think about how scary that is, that the United States could fall to 6 out of 37 countries, despite English being the primary language, and this literacy test being given in English. That's a terrifying prospect. Experts also predict that 13% of 8th grade students, or 15-year-olds, whichever comes first, whoever's participated, they will sit at a proficient level of history knowledge, U.S. history knowledge. 13% of kids, with the destruction of the Department of Education, will be able to understand U.S. history. A country that doesn't understand its history is doomed to repeat it, right? And the last really, really, really horrifying prospect is experts predict that the United States could fall to ranking 28th out of 37 OECD countries in the subject of math. Oh wait, that's where we're at right now. That's not a prediction. That is where we stand right now with the Department of Education. Tens of billions of dollars are being spent. That's how big the Department of Education is. Guarantee you, if you take two graphs and you do a causation test, you could look at when the Department of Education was created in 1979, and then you could look at the rankings of literacy, U.S. history proficiency, science proficiency, and mathematics proficiency. So that's the funny part about this. People are now pearl clutching, as they do, whenever psyops like this happen, whenever positive change is actually suggested, or even in this case, signed into executive order, which doesn't mean it's going to happen. The Department of Education was created by Congress, therefore it's going to have to be passed by Congress. It's not like we're just dissolving. The plan is to just dissolve the Department of Education. Part of the executive order is working with Doge and the Education Secretary, Vince McMahon or whatever the lady's name is, I can't remember, some Irish lady. Their job is to pass over a lot of the actual integral parts of the Department of Education to other departments in the government to try to eliminate bloat, audit, and weed out corruption, which is blatant. Anybody who says that the Department of Education is completely fine, that the state of education in America has been properly handled, is wrong. People are now starting to panic. They're starting to freak out, and they're starting to pretend like they care about things that they never cared about before. That's how you know, and this is a planned and coordinated thing. The same thing happened with USAID. 99% of Americans, I guarantee you, didn't know what USAID was. Are there good programs in USAID? Were there good things that USAID provided for? Was there actual legit relief that it provided? Absolutely. But that was used as an excuse and a cover for the overwhelming majority of that money to be spent on things that people weren't aware of. And when they became aware of it, they're like, hey, I never once signed up for this. I never once voted for a portion of my tax dollars to go to this. And the USAID aid platform was just a money laundering scheme for the CIA to go commit acts of, I don't want to say illegal because you can't really apply American law to other countries overseas, especially countries that we've destroyed, we've bombed the shit out of. But the CIA has factually, this is facts, you can look this up, you can find verified, credible sources of this. USAID was just a way for the CIA to finance its operations overseas, whether that be pushing strange societal messaging and ideals on sexuality or democracy, or just weird covers for actual money laundering or regime change. So just like when USAID funding was being audited, and then things hadn't even been cut yet, they were just being audited, and people started pearl clutching. Well, what's good? This is supposed to go to disaster relief. Okay, has it been doing that correctly? Like I said before in previous podcasts, was the response to the California fires earlier this year and the end of last year, was that handled well? Did USAID, did that go to a good cause? Did it actually help? Did it help the people in North Carolina when they got hit with the Hurricane Helene? Same thing goes for the Department of Education. I'm not saying that there aren't beneficial programs that receive funding from the Department of Education, but if you look at the budget and then you look at the value that we're getting from the dollars spent there, it's undeniable that there is something going on that's not good. People have been saying this from the beginning. 1979 wasn't that long ago. There were a lot of people who are alive that went to school at that time. They remember how different school was. They remember how much higher the quality of education was back when the states and local counties actually had the freedom to push standards, to have guidelines, depending on what their local kids needed most. Parents were able to get involved and actually have control and could dictate requirements and needs. They could measure the needs of their kids. Back when it was standard across the United States for schools to have shop classes, construction class, mechanic class, cooking class. Some schools still do, of course. Places that are smaller knit that the government hasn't overreached on yet. But long story short, this is going to eliminate, if this passes, this is going to eliminate a lot of the bloat and the blatant corruption that is occurring, the money laundering is really, it's money laundering at the end of the day. I guarantee you, every single person who's listening to this right now either has their own story or they have read headlines about corrupt administrators getting busted across the United States for, or even worse and more common, they just get away with things. There are school administrators, superintendents, directors, even principals that receive raises every single year despite kids failing, despite kids ranking 28th out of 37th in mathematics, despite ranking 6th out of 37 OECD countries in literacy, despite the test being in English and us being an English-speaking country. There are administrators that make well above six figures and they get raises every year. In any other capacity in the private world, if you take this out of government and you take this scenario into the private world, that person is getting fired 99% of the time, and the 1% that aren't getting fired are definitely not getting raises. If you go every year to your board of directors, or you're even just you're a sales manager at AT&T or something, I don't know, and every single month and every single year you report that you're down on sales, somebody is going to get in trouble. Somebody's going to get axed, or at least they're going to have a talking to until things change. Unfortunately, since 1979, this blatant corruption has taken place, just like it has taken place in every single aspect of the federal government. When you have a bureaucratic state as big as the United States federal government, there's bound to be corruption. Doesn't mean you need to nuke the system and destroy the entire thing. Luckily, that's not what's happening right now. Luckily, all Doge has done, this is a misconception also with Doge. People keep talking about Elon Musk is firing people. Elon Musk and Doge have 0 firings under their belt. They are responsible for 0 firings. They are just an auditing agency. All they're doing is auditing. They're utilizing AI and a bunch of really smart, probably autistic kids that have an extra level of focus that comes from said autism. They're auditing parts of the federal government, aspects of the federal government, and they're making recommendations to the United States, to the president, on what should be cut, what should be changed, what should be updated, what should be refreshed, renovated, etc. So, I plead to people listening to just sit back and think. Think about what's been uncovered since Donald Trump took office earlier this year, since Doge took over. Think about what's been uncovered from some of the biggest branches of the federal government, some of the biggest departments of the federal government, and apply that scrutiny to the Department of Education and every single department. Period. It kind of goes without saying that if there's money being funneled, especially coming from the taxpayers, don't we have the right to know what that's being spent on? We don't know what our tax dollars are going to. We're starting to find out. We can kind of look at anything that the federal government does and kind of assume, hey, I paid for that a little bit. I don't agree with it, or I do agree with it. But at the end of the day, there have been people advocating for the dissolution or at least the auditing of the Department of Education, and that's what's happening right now. It is being dissolved, and all the vital programs that the Department of Education handles are just going to be combined and merged with other departments of the government. No, libraries are not going to be shut down now. There's not going to all of a sudden not be public libraries, which, by the way, kids are not reading. Adults are not reading. I don't know if you've noticed. They can't read. They rank 6th in literacy, despite there only being like 5 or 6 English-speaking countries in the world. So we're supposed to be the greatest nation. We're supposed to be the most powerful nation in the world, and we can't even read our one language. We're not even literate in our one language that we speak. I've met people in Europe that speak 3+ languages, and I'm not being dramatic. There are some that I've met that speak English better than people that I know that have never left the city that they were born in the United States. Never even attempted to learn another language. They only know Spanish from Breaking Bad, probably. So this has got to change. The power is going back to the parents. Hopefully, it's going back to the states, going back to local cities, local counties, so they can assess the needs of their kids. A rural Arkansas school that has maybe a senior class of 100 kids, they now have the freedom to allocate funding to programs that they see fit. They can create or close down classes that they see fit, that they feel that their students need or don't need. And at the end of the day, the parents in the local community in this Arkansas school are going to know what's best for their kids better than congressmen and women in Washington, D.C., hundreds of miles away. Same goes for California. It's a giant state. There are 1 million cities in California. There are 1 million counties. There are 1 million public schools. You're telling me that every single public school needs the exact same increase in quality for mathematics or science or English? There are some counties out there that do a really good job with what they're given. That probably you could put them in a spelling bee against the entire rest of the country and they would win. But not every single state needs the same thing. And that is where the issue lies. Anytime the power is given back to the states, it's a good thing. That's the entire point of the United States. If you have a country this big, you can't have this much government overreach. It's not possible. It's too big of a country. There's too many different unique needs to each state. So avoid the emotional propaganda. Just give yourself a reminder. This is what I've been reminding myself the past few years. Anytime there is proven positive change occurring, and there's coordinated pushback through all of the legacy slur media sites, I guarantee you they're receiving orders from the CIA and from the government. When all of a sudden every social media platform decided we got a message from the FBI, we're basically being kind of threatened, special tax status might be removed if I, Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, don't adhere to the order from the FBI to silence and remove and filter out the Hunter Biden laptop story. What was that? What about COVID? That was coordinated. That was the government overreaching, letting people know, letting these companies know, these social media platforms, which are supposed to be vessels for free speech. That's why it's called social media. Hey, clamp down on free speech because this is a narrative that we don't like. It's actually true. We know it's true. Because if we actually cared about truth, we would be constantly hitting up Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and Threads and Blue Sky and all these brain rotting platforms, and we'd be telling them, hey, take down the Bigfoot stuff, take down the racist facts, they're not facts, take down the racist misnomers about all these races that people will make jokes about. They don't care about that. Anytime there's a coordinated effort and all of a sudden people are falling for emotional propaganda and saying, oh my gosh, now my autistic kid, he's going to be stupid. Now my kid is not going to be safe. Their education is not going to be good. Sorry. If you actually paid attention to your kids, if you actually were present in your kid's life, and I don't mean this, I hate to sound demeaning because it's 50% of the state of the youth right now is on parents. 50% of it is on public education system, in my opinion. Parents are not present in their kids' lives as well as they probably should be, as much as they should be. Some of that is due to bad parenting, lazy people, pieces of trash, people that probably just shouldn't have kids. Now, I'm not saying anybody has the right to tell anybody whether or not they can be a parent or not, because it's a learning process, I know. You don't pop out your first kid and all of a sudden you're an expert on being a parent. It's a permanent state of learning if you're a good parent. There are a lot of bad parents out there that just don't give a crap. It's too difficult. It's hard to raise kids. So people decide, well, it's hard and I don't like challenge. I don't care. I'm going to justify in my head why I've left my kid at daycare for the entire day, and I even take them to daycare on holidays so I can go and, because I'm a single parent, so I can go sleep around and go to the club. I can do something that a responsible, self-respecting, really parent that's worth anything wouldn't do. And then a lot of it is parents have to work. Both parents have to work. If you do have parents that are staying together, both probably have to work because the cost of living has skyrocketed. It is really hard it's not like what it used to be, where, like in the boomer generation, when boomers were able to raise very large families off of one income. That's very rare today. So I don't say this, and I don't mean to sound like I am accusing all parents of sucking, because I'm not a parent yet. I can only speak on this from an outside perspective, someone with a brain, someone who was very, very blessed to grow up with two great parents and two pairs of amazing grandparents and two amazing families on my mom and dad's side. That's the true privilege. I've talked about this with people many, many times. People talk about white privilege, rich privilege. The real rich privilege, the wealthiest, most invaluable thing that you can have is having two good parents. Because you're already starting off, it's like a cheat code, really, at this point. If the nuclear family is intact in your family structure, you are already starting on lap 2 of 3 ahead of everybody else who might have unfortunately lost the lottery and not been born with good parents. All this to say, I hope now that this will push and this will encourage parents to stay more active in their kids' lives. A lot of parents don't even show up to parent-teacher conferences. Sometimes schools don't have them, or they're not mandatory, or the parents are unable to because they work multiple jobs or something like that. I just am optimistic that this is going to lead to positive change if this is approved by Congress. I think this is going to be one of the toughest hurdles for the Trump administration to get over, but it's not going to be as hard as, I think the hardest task is going to be doing this exact thing with the military-industrial complex, because the military-industrial complex, the corruption runs way deeper, budgets we're dealing with are way higher, but this is beyond money. Dissolving the Department of Education and giving the freedom back to the states, counties, and parents to take care of their kids and assess their kids' educational needs, this is something that you can't put a dollar value on, because this is the just like children are the most rewarding. This is what I've heard from people who have kids. It is the most challenging and fulfilling thing that you can do, but it doesn't have a tangible physical thing that you could show people who don't have kids. Hey, look, if you open a Roth IRA and you dump $7,000 a year into an index fund, a reinvesting index fund, you can show somebody, hey, look at my account. It's grown over 20 years. With raising kids, it's not that easy. You can't justify to people and explain to people who haven't understood, who don't value life as much, or who don't look at human life the way that you do, how much it can change your perspective and the true value in just helping raise a life. So this is the value of this is a statement on how much we care about kids, how much the Trump administration cares about kids and the future of our country, which is the youth. If people are unable to, if we rank so low in literacy and mathematics, that means when we get into the real world and you're faced with a piece of propaganda, or you're faced with a challenge at work, or you're a manager and you're faced with a unique challenge at work, and you need to use resources like maybe the supercomputer in your pocket. But you didn't learn in school how to critically think. You didn't learn in school how to learn, which is truly what I think public school should be. Public school should be, it's an opportunity for people to socialize, because humans are social creatures. And it should be 12 straight grades of learning how to learn. So after you get out of school, you continue learning, because you should really be learning your entire life. You should be improving your entire life, not just up until you're 17 or 18, you graduate high school. So what I'm trying to say is this is an investment on the future of our kids. And I say our kids as I don't have kids yet, but I'm going to. It's coming. They're coming the next couple years. Wow, I'm 24 minutes in and I haven't even gotten to the other things I wanted to talk about. I was actually going to save that until the end, but this was like the most recent thing that's happened, so I guess I'll cover the other things I want to talk about. Speaking of funny business, this anti-free speech bill that was voted through the combating anti-Semitism executive order. I think it's interesting because I haven't heard this perspective said by really anybody yet, but I have a nuanced view on this. So I've kind of covered it before, but there was an executive order passed signed by Trump that was finally utilized recently. It was probably utilized a lot recently, but there was a specific, because of what's going on in Palestine and Israel, there was a specific case that people were getting really upset about. This anti-Semitism executive order was finally utilized to deport a green card holder who's Palestinian. He was deported back to, Palestine. I don't know if he was sent to El Salvador. I don't agree with him being sent to the El Salvador prisons because he didn't commit any crimes that are worthy of being put in a pretty hardcore prison like the ones in El Salvador. He's probably sent back to Palestine, to be honest. That's my guess. I really don't care. This guy sucks as far as I'm concerned. So this guy, his name was like Mahmoud Khalid or something. He's the son of Palestinian parents who were displaced, who grew up in the West Bank, the now West Bank, the now Israeli settled West Bank, and he was given a green card. He originally came to the United States, I believe, on a student visa, and he ended up getting a green card. I'll be honest, I don't know the process to this. I don't know if you're given a green card to study. I don't know if you study with the visa after being in the United States for so many years without committing crimes. Maybe you get a green card. I don't care. This guy openly called for it. Here's the thing. A lot of opponents of this executive order have said, well, this is just a bill that doesn't allow you to criticize Israel. I can see that making sense, but the basis of deporting this green card Palestinian holder there is a United States bill that has been in place for a long time. I cannot remember. I probably should have taken the notes on this, but it explicitly forbids non-citizens who are in the United States legally from encouraging violence, from encouraging overthrowing of government, from committing espionage or encouraging espionage, things like this. This guy has openly on social media, and I'm pretty sure he's put together student protests where he has openly called for violence against Americans, an intifada, another intifada against America, against Israel, and he has openly expressed support for Hamas. Now, I'm not saying that every kid, every dumb American student, every American-born English native who goes out and they repeat Hamas talking points, they're not all bad people. They're just uneducated. But this kid, who is Palestinian, who understands the sheer levels of horror experienced by Palestinians and Israelis in the Middle East and just how unstable the region is, he understands this. He understands what he's saying. He knows what he's saying. He is Palestinian. So calling for an intifada, which is a historical term, it's a people who run defense for jihadists will say, well, this just means revolution. This just means taking the power back from the corrupt Israeli government. But if you look at multiple iterations and instances of intifada, in Israel. It's resulted in the mass killing, attempted genocide, ethnic cleansing of Jews, and the raping and pillaging of Jews. So he knows what he's doing. He's repeated Hamas talking points. I honestly would not be surprised. I might catch some crap for this, okay? Shame on me for not wanting someone who supports Hamas, a charter who has openly, in their charter, has stated that Israel is little Satan, America is big Satan. If you don't view Americans as human beings, and you view them or the country as great Satan, it makes it really easy for you to justify violence against said people. This is how Muslims kill each other. This is how jihadists kill each other. This is how Sunnis and Shias kill each other. They believe in the same religion. They read the same holy book. There's just slight differences that justifies in their head their ability, their actions taken against their fellow Muslim brothers and sisters. And the same goes for lots of different groups, but specifically in this case, this was not an anti-free speech move. I'm sorry. Somebody like this is a security risk. Now, there haven't been any cases, and here's the thing with this executive order. This is not an executive order that just gives Trump the ability to be like, zoom in on that UC Berkeley crowd. See all those kids over there holding the Palestinian flag? Deport them. No, that's not what it does. The executive order aims at it gives the government the ability to withhold funding from publicly funded universities until they investigate and they address certain talking points, certain perspectives. Now, I've said this before. There's a reason why I called this the terrible anti-free speech bill. This 100% can be taken advantage of. This 100% can go the wrong way. But at the end of the day, it is explicitly stated in the executive order. This is discouraging certain talking points, and it is encouraging universities to look into and investigate and survey and make sure that there's not a security risk with people who say things like, or when they equate Jews to Nazis, or when they inflate, what am I trying to say? One of the things in the executive order says people who confuse or combine the Jewish people with the Israeli government. That's the biggest difference. If you accuse all Jewish people, if you basically, a people cannot be fully held accountable for their government. That is just 100% true for every single nation in the entire world. Americans cannot be and should not be held fully responsible for their government because our government is large and it's not perfect and it's corrupt. And a lot of what they do is either done in secrecy or something that we didn't vote for. The same goes for every single government in the entire world. It goes for Palestine. So I hate this talking point. It makes me sick when I see... I'll talk about this in a second, but not every Israeli citizen is behind what's going on in Israel. Not every Israeli citizen supports Benjamin Netanyahu. He's actually not that popular. He's been dwindling in popularity lately because he's been in power for so long. So what I'm trying to say is this just opens up universities for penalties if students and staff advocate for the destruction of Israel, compare Jews to Nazis, or they conflate the Jewish people with the Israeli government. That's really what I'm trying to say, but I can't spit it out because it's early. And I haven't had my coffee yet. Actually, I'm sipping coffee right now. That's probably the reason why I start to get phlegmy throats, TMI, but I should probably drink tea instead of coffee while I do podcasts, but whatever, I do what I want. So, the important thing to remember with this bill is, again, you have to look at the nuances of it. And it comes down to how you feel about this bill. It really comes down to, honestly, people's personal biases on the Israel versus the Middle East wars, specifically with the Israel and Palestine conflict right now. You can't say that it started in October 7th, 2023, because it's been going on since 1947. So it's been going on since 1947, 1948. So it really depends on your biases on this. I can see the intent here, and I can also see how this could go wrong. So we're going to have to see. I would rather, first of all, here's how I look at it. Why are we at this point? I just gave you the facts. I just shared the statistics on the state of our educational system and how poorly we're doing as a country. Why are we sponsoring foreigners to come get educated in America? I'm not saying we shouldn't, but can we start with sponsoring our own kids? Maybe? Can we start with maybe the first lesson on this following Monday, following the dissolution of the Department of Education? I encourage every single state to sit down and revisit with their 17 and 18-year-old kids, and maybe start with the difference between your and your, or maybe the differences between there, and there, because that is the most common as an English major, as an English graduate and degree holder, and a writer, and really truly a passionate lover of the English language. I die a little every single day, every single time I log onto social media, and I see people having AI, ChatGPT generated arguments, and then if they make their own arguments, they're just not spelling anything right. They're not using proper grammar. They just look like illiterate bugs. Truly. A lot of people are just bugs. They're moths in social media and disposable entertainment and propaganda is the lamp. And people are the moths. They're the bugs. Makes me sick. But really, though, seriously, I'm being serious. On a practical point, why are we funding foreigner student visas? Do we do a background check on these people? Do we go, oh, hey, maybe this guy whose own parents, who probably had a very traumatic childhood, he might have a reason to hate America, whose parents were displaced because of American-funded Israeli operations in the West Bank. Maybe he might pose as a security risk. Is it safe to put this guy in a university with a bunch of other kids with bright futures? And I'm not saying this guy's a bad person, or I've never met him. I've never talked to him. I guarantee you if we talked, we'd have a lot in common. He's a human like me. But I just, the benefit of the doubt starts to wear off when you advocate for the destruction of the United States, great Satan, little Satan, when you equate Nazis to Jews, when you repeat anti-Semitic, dangerous talking points. And I hate to be that guy that starts to pull that card out, because I've seen so many people just go, oh, if you're criticizing Israel, then you're being anti-Semitic. No, that's not true. I can criticize Israel all I want, and I have since the beginning of this war, since I've understood, since I've studied and I've read books, and since I've listened to historians speak on this conflict and the history of Israel, the complicated history of Israel and the Jewish people. I have been as nuanced as you possibly could get. No government gets a blank check. No government gets away with everything. No government gets a free pass. Now there's a difference, like I said, between despising governments and despising a people. I will not listen to you if you're attacking a group on their racial, ethnic, cultural, religious identity. I just can't. I cannot do it. I can't listen to you. No matter what it is. The same standard is for every single ethnicity across the entire human race. There isn't a single group of humans on this planet that I hate. There are a lot of governments that I hate, though. And the problem is it's a combination of miseducation and ignorance when it comes to Israel and Jewish people, the Jewish race, the Jewish religion. The same exact ignorance has plagued people when it comes to Islam and Arabs. A lot of people talk about Muslims as if it is an ethnicity. It's not. It's a religion. There are members of every single ethnicity across the world that are practicing Muslims, Christians, atheists, Hindus, Buddhists. And it's important to remember this point. You cannot label an entire group based off of a couple people. You can't grade you can't grade the quality of a group based off of a couple people. That is the basis of this, of not being an ignorant, retarded racist, a schizophrenic racist. When it comes to any race, any group, doesn't have to just be ethnicity. Unfortunately, the temporary ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, Israel-Palestine, Israel-Gaza, however you want to say it, that's ended. And the killing has continued. The slaughtering has continued. And it is such a tragedy. Loss of human life is always a tragedy, as far as I'm concerned. When you start to get down to justifying, oh, well, that kid shouldn't have been born in Palestine. Sorry that dead baby is blown up. Sorry I had to log into Instagram and see, you had to log into Instagram and see dead children. Dead children, dead people, period. The line's crossed for me. I don't care the context. I don't care the context. I want the killing to stop. I want it to be permanent. I know that's a naive wish. These conflicts have been going on for 2,000 years. But I can still be sad about it. I can still be heartbroken, disgusted, and repulsed by it. And I am. What I had alluded to earlier was there's a talking point that a lot of people who repeat the talking point of, oh, hey, Israel's our greatest ally. I'm not going to get into that argument whether or not Israel's our greatest ally. But people who will defend Israel before they defend the United States as Americans, a lot of really ignorant people on this side of the coin. So we already dunked on the pro-Hamas, uneducated, ignorant American group. Now let's go to the other side of the coin. The people who sit here and they'll see videos of... I saw a video of a grandma wailing. It was so unsettling, the pitch of her... It was soul-crushing to hear this Palestinian woman, this grandma's cries, and she's saying in Arabic or whatever dialect they speak in Palestine, my entire family's gone. My nieces, my nephews, my grandchildren, they're gone. And then a bunch of uneducated, heartless, seriously lacking empathy group of people say, well, you shouldn't have supported Hamas. You shouldn't have voted Hamas in. How about you just follow this rule? Like I said before, a people cannot be held fully accountable. They cannot. It is impossible. It is incorrect. It is actually immoral and just outright wrong to hold a people accountable, completely accountable for their government. Technically, yes, Hamas was quote unquote voted for. They are supported by some Palestinian people. So, does that mean that this grandma deserves to lose her kids? How do you know that she voted for this? She didn't commit those atrocities. How do you know she supports this war? How do you know that she supports Hamas? How do you know that she funds Hamas? That's not how it works. People need to understand Palestine is not America. You cannot take the state... Palestine is not the richest nation in the world like America. You cannot sit here and assume that every single Palestinian supports Hamas. That kind of goes without saying, but I guess not. Because people are out here mocking this grandma dying, mocking dead kids, turning the other cheek, going, they shouldn't have done October 7th. Of course Hamas shouldn't have committed October 7th. I hope every single member of Hamas gets their heads blown off. But it doesn't justify the loss of human life. That and a trillion and an infinite amount of other factors are why this is one of the most complex issues plaguing the world. Has for thousands of years. And I truly do hope in the future there will be peace in this region. I'm an eternal optimist. Luckily I'm a little more optimistic than I was yesterday when I woke up, because here's my recommendation to all my listeners. Tucker Carlson just did an interview with Steve Woodcock. He is pretty much the negotiator that originally was able to bridge the gap between Trump's administration, so the United States, Israel, Dubai, Qatar, and a few other Middle Eastern countries, and Hamas in Palestine, to originally get this 30-day temporary ceasefire. I said before that I hope the ceasefire turns into permanent peace. I don't think it's going to. It just had to be honest with myself and with you guys. I was right. It was good at the time because it was peace. If it's 1 second of peace, it's better than 0 seconds of peace, right? He also has been involved in the talks to end the Russia-Ukraine war. So he's a very skilled negotiator. He has history. He has experience, which is very important for negotiators when it comes to dealing with different personalities, different leaders, different countries, different histories. Because if you go into a negotiation, so if you moderate a problem with your siblings, so I'm the oldest of 4. If I have 2 siblings that are bickering about something and I go handle it, it's probably going to be easier because I know them. They're my family. I grew up with them. I know their personalities. But if I was asked to moderate a long-standing conflict between 2 other siblings, it's going to be a little harder. Steve Woodcock has experience doing business. He understands law, a lot of laws in these Middle Eastern countries, and he's done a good job. And he alluded to some very exciting prospects coming up in the future, including more countries signing the Abraham Accords, which will be one step closer to peace in the Middle East. And I'm optimistic. I'm really excited to see what happens here. Next thing I wanted to talk about. So I encourage everybody to look into the JFK files that have been released themselves. Here's the thing. I'm not an expert. I don't have enough time to look through all 140,000 or however many files have been uploaded to the government archives. But you have a supercomputer in your pocket, most likely. You probably have multiple supercomputers in your household. You should do what I did, do what lots of people have been doing, plugging these files into AI and asking them to really break down and summarize a lot of the things that either people were suspicious of since the assassination of JFK, if some theories have been debunked through these files or if they've been confirmed. Pretty much, here's the issue with, what would you call it? The creation of mystique around the assassination of JFK. When you withhold information that should be public from the public, that's when people start using their imagination to fill in the blanks. And since it's been, how many years has it been? It's been almost 70 years. It's been 62 years, right, since JFK was assassinated. And that has left a lot of room for conspiracy theories or just theories. And the unfortunate thing is, some of these conspiracies go really, really, really wild, and it's created an unquenchable thirst, really, for truth. And a lot of people, they want certain things to be true. They've been led to believe certain things are true. And it's not their fault because the truth has been withheld from us. A lot of people are unhappy with it because they wanted insert a certain group of people or insert a certain country or insert a certain person to be involved. They wanted a certain theory to be true. And while it is a complicated assassination plot, it just looks like what we've kind of all suspected. The more reasonable people have suspected that a lot of different groups, a lot of different people wanted JFK out. And the reason why? He was threatening positive change. He was threatening somebody's pocketbooks. That's really what it boils down to. Threatening people's grip on power, control, and their pocketbooks. The files have pretty much pointed towards, there's not going to be an outright confirmation. There's not going to be a file that says, hello, this is God. I watched it happen. Here are the 5 to 6 parties that were involved who killed. These are the 6 parties that killed JFK. There's not going to be one file. But so far, what I've gathered is there were a few different groups that wanted JFK killed. The CIA, the KGB, Mafia, almost the entire federal government, they really wanted JFK out. Without a doubt in my mind, with just the surveillance file on Lee Harvey Oswald, I'm sure he was involved, but I don't think he was the lone gunman. Because if you just look at what the Russians had said, what his army file had said, he was not very good at taking orders. He was a little unstable. He's a little weird. A lot of people were like, no way could this guy be like forced or manipulated into doing anything on his own. He also was not a great shot with a rifle. So it could potentially be that he was one of the gunmen and he missed, and that's why JFK was shot in the neck. And then there was another gunman, because just the angle is really difficult. It's not impossible. There are very, very talented shooters out there that could make that shot, but all signs point to, and there being files on him from the Russians and his time in the military, they point to him not being that guy who could make that shot. So I'm not saying that he wasn't involved. I just really think that he was one of the shooters. There was another gunman. Who knows who the other gunman was? There have been a lot of theories. One person had theorized that the driver was, there's like in the grainy footage of the assassination, people have pointed out like a little bit of chrome or something that looks like it comes from the driver, and he's the one who shot JFK. But that's not possible because the direction of the bullet didn't come from the front of the car, it came from behind. So absolutely, it is pretty much proven the CIA and the KGB and the Mafia were involved. The CIA basically they wanted JFK out because he wouldn't allow them to overthrow Fidel Castro. The military-industrial complex wanted to go to war in Vietnam. They wanted him out. The KGB, Russia, didn't like JFK because we got very close to nuking each other to death and destroying the world. And the Mafia didn't like JFK because he was cracking down on organized crime. His brother was cracking down on organized crime. And his dad, I think, had also cracked down on organized crime. He had supposedly, I don't forget, Joe Kennedy had supposedly, when he was in positions of power, he had kind of used the Mafia to help him further his cause for whatever it was he was doing. I can't, it's very vague, the details I remember. And then he was supposed to kind of pay him back, and he didn't, so the Mafia had hated the Kennedys from then on. And then absolutely Jack Ruby, who had known Mafia ties, for sure. I showed my wife, who knows nothing about this stuff, doesn't care. I showed her the Lee Harvey Oswald assassination video, and her face was priceless. Her expression was priceless. She was like, this looks like a staged Mafia movie. This is an obvious Mafia hit. It's the most, she said it looked fake. Because it really is just so preposterous that this happened. And we sat here and let ourselves get lied to. Well, I guess the good thing is we kind of didn't trust the government narrative, and that's why there's been so many theories. And a lot of them had some basis in truth. So we're never going to get an outright answer. And if we did, like I said, if there was a big surveillance camera in the sky, if the moon was a big camera and it was able to zoom in on that day and tell us what happened, there would still be people that don't accept it. So it is what it is. I encourage everybody to look into the files themselves. Watch out for the media narratives, because again, the legacy slur media, they're getting orders on this kind of stuff. Even though there's nobody that was involved in this assassination that's alive today, those apparatuses still are. The CIA is still around. The KGB is I don't know about the KGB, but the CIA is still around. The military-industrial complex is still around. The kind of pro-war, bloodthirsty pigs like LBJ, they still exist. So this isn't something that, it's not like this couldn't happen again. It may or may not have happened. There may or may not have been 2 or 3 attempts on the current president right now. Like I said, there's going to be pushback on positive change. Change is not always pretty. That is for sure. So the last thing I wanted to talk about is just another really sad story that's been unfolding in Syria. Al-Qaeda, or al-Nusra, has continued to slaughter minorities in Syria. Specifically, we've seen videos. There are videos out there that I do not encourage anybody to watch. There are Christians and Alawites being slaughtered in Syria as we speak. This is all done under the quote-unquote rebel leader Julani's leadership. So this is a guy who had a $10 million bounty on his head by the United States until 5 seconds ago, until he took out and he toppled Bashar al-Assad's regime, which the West, so the United States, UK, Turkey, they'd been wanting this to happen forever. They'd wanted Assad out forever. The reason that they would say is, he uses chemical weapons on his own people. They made up a lot of this propaganda. Yes, he was not a perfect leader. I've said this many times. There is no perfect leader. Definitely not any perfect leader in the Middle East. Even the safest countries in the world, safest countries in the Middle East, like Qatar, their leaders might have done some shady stuff. Sometimes you got to rule with an iron thumb. Doesn't justify violence. But what I'm trying to say is there were a lot of lies that were spouted about Bashar al-Assad and his regime. But one undeniable fact is that, one, he's an Alawite, which is why he had to flee the entire region, because he probably would have been captured and killed had he not fled to Russia. For some reason, the only country in the world that doesn't want to kill him for some reason. It's undeniable. Alawites and Christians and other minorities were protected under his regime. The United States didn't like him, most likely because he wouldn't do their bidding. The same thing goes for Maduro in Venezuela. We've heard all the propaganda about how horrible it is in Venezuela, and it is the United States, for some reason, responsibility. It's the taxpayers' responsibility to fund toppling of regimes like the Maduro and Assad regime. Unfortunately, the guy who's in control of Syria right now, we not only funded him, but we trained him. Back in 2012, Obama oversaw Operation Sycamore, a CIA operation that funded and trained jihadists, members of Al-Qaeda. Literally, we allied with Al-Qaeda again for the second time. Probably not second time, for the 12th time. We trained and funded them so we could use them to overthrow Assad. And it finally happened. So it was a multi-year operation to topple the Assad regime, creating another power vacuum in a country in the Middle East, which is something that we have done for so long. I'm sick and tired of it because it has had long-term repercussions on not just the countries and the people of these countries who deserve to live without being bombed and seeing their family members killed every single day, but it's also had repercussions for the West, for places that are taking refugees without any type of quality assurance. I say that I don't mean to make that sound messed up, but it's true. There's no regulation, and it has disabled not just the Middle East, but has disabled the entire world, or any place that is taking unregulated refugees. I wonder how veterans feel knowing that the same people who tried to kill them, maybe even maimed them, or tried to kill and maybe even actually did succeed in killing and maiming their friends overseas in these wars, how do they feel knowing that their taxpayer dollars, without consent, non-consensually, funded Al-Qaeda and trained them? Is this a justified use of the term the enemy of my enemy is my friend. Why is Assad our enemy? What threat did he pose to me, an American? I haven't seen any evidence to prove that he was a threat, that his Syria was a threat to me personally. But I have seen evidence that the de facto violent, terroristic, jihadist, unelected, quote-unquote leader, Julani of Syria, I've seen I've seen evidence that he poses more of a threat to me. He was a part of Al-Qaeda. He helped create the Al-Nusra Front, which is just an offshoot of Al-Qaeda. And he is now overseeing Christian and Alawite and other minorities' slaughter and ethnic cleansing. So how is this good? How can this be justified? How is this a justified use of my taxpayer dollars and of other Americans' taxpayer dollars? The European Union has also announced that it's pledging $6 billion of aid to Al-Qaeda-controlled Syria. So this guy Julani has received praise. He's received aid. He's going to continue to receive more aid. Why? Why is this guy our buddy now? Why did he have a $10 million bounty on his head by the United States for being a member of Al-Qaeda, a high-ranking member of Al-Qaeda and Al-Nusra? Why is the EU announcing $6 billion of funding to him? Is it going to work this time? Are we going to continue to allow a brutal, iron fist dictator, dangerous, provenly violent, evil person to do our bidding? How long is he going to do our bidding? What if the second United States decides, hey, Julani, you're going to let us build a military base here, and you're going to kick all your Al-Qaeda buddies out. You're going to tell them to skirt. And he says no. What's going to happen then? Then he'll be the new Assad. There will always be a new Assad. There will always be a new puppet regime until it's not a puppet regime. And then that's our new enemy. Then that's our new justification to start another war and put our servicemen and women in harm's way. It'll give us an excuse to launch more drone strikes, to kill more people in the Middle East, kill more Arabs, kill more Muslims, kill more Christians, kill more Alawites, kill more whoever. It doesn't matter, because we're not verifying that every single person that's getting bombed at this wedding is a member of Al-Qaeda. Never have. Yeah, it's war. Casualties of war. That's what a lot of bloodthirsty animals will say. A bunch of evil. I can't have a conversation with you if you can justify the loss of innocent human life. Sorry. Oh, it's war, baby. No, it doesn't have to be like that. I don't care what anybody says. Call me a bleeding heart liberal. Call me a tree hugger. I don't give a shit. I don't like the loss of human life, period. And I'm not on a high horse. I just don't like the loss of human life. Because when you start justifying one human life being taken, then you can start justifying more and more and more. It's a very slippery slope, and not a slope that I want to go down. That's going to do it for this episode of Independently Minded. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you took some things away. Hope you maybe learned something, or something piqued your interest and now you're going to look into it. I'm not sure. But I did make that recommendation earlier. Want to make another recommendation. I've been meaning to do this since the game came out, but Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, amazing experience. I beat the story on it about 2 weeks ago, and I've been replaying it off and on, trying to do side quests. There's not much for me to do now, but there is still high replayability because it's a really great game. For anybody who didn't play the first one or isn't aware of what it's about, it's a fantasy RPG. It's a historical fiction RPG, actually. It's not even a fantasy. There's no fantasy elements to it. It's a very historically accurate fantasy game, RPG, medieval RPG that takes place in 1400s Bohemia. The main character is not a real person, but one of the other main characters is. A lot of the characters are actual historical figures. The Roman king at the time is accurate for who it was in the 1400s. The money, down to the landscapes, the towns. There are towns that are a couple hours away from me that you could go to in the game. They look a lot different today. They're not major cities, but it's a really, really amazing game. A lot of passion and love went into it. There's a small independent group called Warhorse that made the first and second game. They've been working on it forever. It's just you got to support indie creators at this point, because if you look at the big name publishers, they're greedy. The passion is gone with a lot of these people. Just look at the destruction of the Assassin's Creed brand, which I have never personally been a huge fan of. I really only liked one game, which is Black Flag. That game was a masterpiece. But you just look at big IPs. These companies have almost taken blank checks from fans. Fans will just keep buying the games no matter what, because it's Bethesda, it's EA, it's Ubisoft. But the indie companies are the ones that they have to make. They don't get big funding. They're not owned by Microsoft or Activision or Sony. They have to make games that they're passionate about, because they don't have the name brand recognition that gets them money. They have to make a good game. And to make a good game, you got to be passionate about it. And you can tell that they really loved and enjoyed making this game. It's just one of the most recent and best experiences, just truly enjoyable, long-lasting, fun experiences I've had with playing a game. It's the type of game that when you're done, you're like, man, I would do anything to play this again for the first time. It's how I feel about a lot of my favorite games, but that's my recommendation. I don't remember if I recommended the Bob Dylan biopic, A Complete Unknown, but I recommend that as well. It's a great movie. It's a great exploration of a guy that I myself didn't really, I didn't grow up listening to Bob Dylan. I only started listening to him 3 months ago. And then the biopic came out, and then I was like, wow, this is perfect timing. So I recommend that movie as well. But anyway, thank you guys for the support. I will be not at home. I will be stateside for the next week and a half. So there's not going to be an episode next week, but I'm sure there will be a follow-up episode when I'll have a bunch of things to complain about, because this will be the first time I've been back in the States in 2.5 years. So anyway, I'll catch you guys on the next episode. Stay hydrated, stay optimistic, and as always, stay safe and stay away from those crazies out there. Thank you.